All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the show. Today I have a great guest for you. I have Jerry Minardi, who is the co-owner, I believe, of Selling Technologies. I've known Jerry for the last 10 years. I actually met him, and I'm not quite sure. I might have been the first person in Canada that actually has bought his Business Killers videos and program a few years back, and I loved it. We reconnected again on LinkedIn and started having conversations. And really, we both are on mission in helping financial advisors to grow their business and helping them to move forward. So I want to introduce and welcome Jerry to the conversation today. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, Jerry, and just tell us a little bit about you?
I don't have a very interesting story. I came out of the music business. My brother and I got into the film business. We got into the direct marketing television business. Then we started doing a lot of marketing for insurance and financial services. And as business owners, we've never been on your side of the table, but as business owners, we're very frustrated as to how the industry approached us as customers, always trying to sell stuff. And it's just such a non-starter. And it homogenized the industry for us. So, when you see nothing but commoditization in front of you, then you just shop price, right? And so it became kind of our mission to really help other business owners like us be better consumers of financial services. And that's how we ended up starting Selling Technologies. And then, people talk about, well, you guys are a video company that's in financial services. No, we're a human behavior company that uses video to motivate behavior. And it just so happens, it's the preferred form of consuming information nowadays. Here we are, Daniel and I,
doing a video.
Two guys talking on video.
So again, Jerry, you got to give yourself a credit. Hold on. You said that was not an interesting story. Man, I just want to talk about that, what you just mentioned and the journey that you were on and what you have gone through. So I'm going to tell you, I think you're doing, and I think this is kind of an interesting thing. We all think our stories are not interesting until you start sharing it. And I think, again, with financial advisors, when we work with them and we start to find out what the journey they were on, where they have come from and how they have become who they are today, that's all part of your life and what you have gone through, and people find that fascinating. So give yourself a little bit more credit when it comes down to not being a fascinating or interesting story.
Go me.
100%.
But you, Daniel, you just brought up a great point, and I don't want to get sidetracked here, but if you want to get a business owner engaged, ask them that one question. Gee, how'd you start that business? And boom, they'll talk for 20 minutes.
100%. So. And what I love, and I'm just going to go and summarize this. So basically, you have said the story that I've heard from many advisors where they have said that the experience they had with somebody in the financial industry was so horrible, or maybe their family has gone through challenges when it came down to the finances. So that's the reason why they became a financial advisor. So your story is a little bit different. You did the second best thing. You said, hey, we've had not a good experience, so we're going to go out there and do something to help them. And again, I love that. And that's primarily reason for Reset Global and what we're doing. Me as a former, I'm still an advisor, but really helping advisors to go and change and be the change for somebody else, to really help them to become that advice to somebody. And again, as far as the financial industry, there's many issues with it. And that's really what we're here to talk about.
Well, you hit on something which I think is very important. The legacy aspect of what advisors today have kind of dragged into the 21st century along with them is the legacy of the industry, right? So that we talked about it earlier, the industry always says, well, if you want to make more money, sell more stuff, right? But that first of all, it commoditizes the advisor because you're always in selling mode, and people don't want to be sold to, especially not financial services, right? Because it's already an intangible. So, people don't wake up in the morning and go, damn, I need some life insurance or whatever. It just doesn't happen. Yeah. So it's not top of mind. And when you approach it as something that you're going to sell someone, it's especially nowadays, it turns people off. It's a non-starter.
Yeah.
So like you said, as an advisor in the 21st century, how do you differentiate yourself and carve out a space where eventually people start coming to you?
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned something we were going to kind of tackle. What's the biggest challenge? And we kind of almost answered this. The biggest challenge, I think, for financial advisors today is that whole idea that, you know what, financial services and a financial advisor at this point is a commodity. And
Yeah.
really what it comes down to, and I think what advisors need to do, is start asking them that, question: what makes me different? How do I differentiate myself? And again, unfortunately, the financial industry, when I was still in it and participating when I started, it was all about what you mentioned, Jerry, is, they taught us how to go out there and sell products. And it was all about sales. You want to make more money, just go out there and sell.
Right.
Nobody really talked about the whole idea. And I use the example of, there's a difference between, selling and marketing. Selling is essentially like going out there and hunting, where marketing is more about farming. Right? You actually have to put something in the ground. You got to nurture it. And it's all about building relationships. And I think the challenge is that advisors have is that they need to start thinking about from the perspective of that if you're just out there and you're hunting, you start as an advisor. I call them a technician. They started as an advisor. They're a generalist. Hey, listen, when you're just starting in the business, yeah, you got to be hunting because you're just starting. That's okay. Unfortunately, I have conversations with advisors 10, 15, 20 years in the business that are still hunting. They don't have that specialization. They did not focus on a specific market. I asked them, who's your client? And they say, well, you know what? It's anybody from that, from a family market to a millennials, to a business owner. And like, hold on, you're like telling me you're running 5 different businesses? And I think this is where advisors need to realize that they need to start to focus. But as you, Jerry, speak with advisors, what do you kind of find as kind of the biggest challenge that they have in the ever-changing environment? Because things are changing. Like you mentioned, people still want to buy, but they don't want to be sold to. And nobody buys insurance. What they do buy is there is a reason for it. Like they want to make sure that their family's not, that their family's going to be taken care of, that they can have a peace of mind. They're buying it more for the things that they want to get out of it. But what do you kind of see? What do you hear out there? That's the kind of the challenge that advisors are having these days.
Well, I think you touched on it. Part of it is a lot of folks, if you can fog a mirror, you could be their client. And it's like, it's really hard for people in the industry to say no, right?
Yeah.
So they meet someone and the person says, well, yeah, here's my background. It's like, well, that's great. You know what? You're not a fit for me and my practice because I focus on X. But they're so afraid of saying no because it's like, oh my God, that person, could be someone who buys a lot of XYZ. Again, you got to be careful because it's like, what do you sell? Yeah. That's a hard thing, I think, for people in the industry to define. People are like, well, I do assets under management and I do life insurance, but you can't be good at all of it, right? So you have the people that they want to sell it all, but they don't want to share in the commissions, let's say, right? So it's really complex. It's a complex industry, and it's further compounded. The complexity is further compounded by people that want to gather it all and not share, as opposed to if you share, then you're really part of a team, and now you can be a specialist. Right? Yeah. Now you can be a specialist because you can focus on what you do best, but it's like, well, you need to talk to my associate Daniel because he specializes in X. And it sounds like you need X before you can use what I do. And that's, I think, very scary for people in the industry.
It's scary, but when you think about that, how does that now position that advisor? It positions them as an absolute authority that says, hey, you know what? I'm not just here trying to sell you something. And listen, I know when I was an advisor, when you don't have people to talk to, when you do get that somebody that I've got a live one here, they're fog and mirror, they look kind of healthy. You're trying to figure out what you can sell them, and you kind of list off a whole bunch of things, just hoping for them to become your client. I think, kind of consumers now understand that that's not what they want. That's not what they're looking for. So for that advisor to start to specialize, it is a scary thing, but it also creates an opportunity, because now you can position yourself. Because put it that way, there was a great quote that I love using. I saw it the other day. It says, financial advisor has to Uber themselves or they will become a blockbuster. Right? Because the whole idea is, you know what, there are a lot of companies that are coming up with like zero fees, the robo advisors, financial, comprehensive financial plan for free. How do you compete with that? Well,
how do you compete with free?
Exactly. And you can't anymore unless you start to differentiate yourself, unless you start to saying, hey, you know what? Yeah, I have the ability to work with everybody. I've got the ability to provide everything. But, I recognize as an advisor, or advisors need to recognize that essentially that doesn't work anymore. And it will become a struggle because you will continuously just be looking for that next person that's going to buy, as opposed to now positioning yourself as an authority and saying what you just mentioned, Jerry. Hey, you know what? It sounds like the problem you really have is X. And listen, you know what? I specialize with Y. Unless we resolve X, there is no point with Y right now. You will have a client for life because you're showing them that you are really more, and I'll put it this way, you're kind of like a specialist when it comes down to a doctor, right? I mean, if you have a problem, you go to the generalist, and he tells you, hey, you know what, we need to do a brain surgery. And if that generalist tells you, you know what, I've got opening next Wednesday.
Right.
What's your time? I'm sure you'd be like going, no, it's okay.
Yeah. Right.
You expect them to refer you to a specialist. And again, when you look at somebody that's a specialist, they don't, they're not out there. I used to have this calling with another coach that says, you know what, Sinatra was not moving his own piano.
Yeah, that's right.
Like he showed up and he played. So for an advisor, that's essentially what we do. We want to help advisors to get to that point. But there is you can't go there from where you are right now, right? Sinatra did not go from where he was to, where he was, towards the end, where he just showed up, played the piano and done that. Same thing with a surgeon, right? So things have to be set up. And I think this is kind of the whole conversation where the change or the challenge that's happening, that really financial advisors have to understand that they have to learn how to market themselves. It's not about selling, it's about marketing. And I think this is where both, Jerry and I are trying to help advisors to go and start thinking that way, that you actually, when you're in front of a client, and I'm going to ask you this because this is the reason you're doing what you're doing right now. Like, did you even understand what some of those problems or challenges that you had were when you were, talking to a financial advisor?
Well, no, because they never engaged us at that level. Yeah. It's like all they looked at was, you're in business, and as a business owner, you need life insurance, you need disability, you know what I mean? So it's like they put you into a box and then, poured the stuff in the top of the box that you needed because you own a business, as opposed to, tell me about what you do, number one. Tell me about your family situation, number two, right? Yeah. Just all general questions to really get an understanding of where is this person? Do you have any insurance now? How much do you have? How's it set up? Do you have any documents that have been, do you have a partner? It never got to that. It got
as you
that
mentioning
granular.
This, yeah, as you mentioning, Jerry, and again, I'm looking at it from as an advisor, because I was there. Like, you just described me, and part of me, and I want to go and hide. But again, I was never taught, and it's about marketing. And what you're just mentioning, if you showed up at the doctor's office, right, and he looks at you and you tell him, yeah, you know what, my leg is hurting, and he starts writing a prescription. Right. I know I would be like going, hold on, like, aren't you going to check me out? Like, aren't you going to ask any question? No, I know exactly what it is. It's exactly this. Now, he may be correct, but he might be completely dead wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And again, when you're dealing with people's finances, like, you know what, people are looking for an advice, and they're looking for a trusted advisor. And if you are already going there into the conversation, knowing what you have to do, and I know, and unfortunately, most advisors, when they go in front of a client, the two questions they're interested in is, how many assets do you have? And where are they? Can I get that in? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, hold on, that maybe worked in the past. And again, this is where that robo-advisor, hey, they'll serve those clients that are looking for that advice. For, kind of the 21st century advisor, they have to become more as a doctor. They have to become somebody that's essentially going to go out there and ask the questions, dig a little bit deeper.
They have to be a diagnostician.
Diagnostician, yes, that was the word, yes.
And the problem, you also mentioned something that is a fundamental problem in the industry nowadays, and it's training. Because there is none.
Yeah.
They'll train you on the product, but they never train you on how to be a diagnostician.
100%. And again, and the only things that the diagnostic tools that are provided there to help you sell.
Correct. They're fact
not
finding.
To help you to find out a little bit more about the clients and what is the right fit for them. So again, listen, I don't want to be here, kind of, putting down the whole industry, but this is the challenge. This is the reality of what has happened. And again, like you mentioned, this is what I've experienced, and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm sure this is what you're, why we're here, is helping advisors to see things a little bit more from a different perspective.
Right.
And I mentioned this quote to you, Jerry, before the call, was that, the biggest problem that financial advisors have is not all the things they don't know, because there is tons of stuff that they're not going to know. I think the biggest challenge that advisors have today is the things that they do know that are not so. And I think this is the challenge, and I know this is why I do what I do, and this is partly why we're going to be doing these calls, is to help the advisors ask themselves the question of, hey, is what I'm doing really giving me that difference? Is this really working? What do I need to change? What maybe needs to change? Do I need to get the training a little bit more on the marketing as opposed to on the selling, right? You don't need to become the best marketer that's out there, but you need to understand that marketing is a part of what you're doing, and you really need to go and start focusing on those parts. So really working on the business as opposed to just working in the business. And the financial industry has done a great job helping you work in the business.
Yeah. They obviously they supply you with the product, but I guess, and we touched on it, it's complicated, right? You have to first understand, what's my ideal client look like, right? What do they look like? Where can I find them? And then, but finding them, turning over a rock and finding one, it doesn't happen, number one. Number two, that doesn't help you differentiate yourself in the market. So the other thing is, you've got to understand, how am I perceived on the receiving end, right? So like me as the business owner, I am the customer, right? So how do you find me as a business owner, number one, and then how do you get my attention in a differentiated fashion? And what my experience has been over the years as a business owner is, the industry tends to be pretty impatient, right? They want to get to the point where they can start talking about the stuff they sell. And unfortunately, and again, I don't want to just be knocking the industry the entire time, but again, what do I get from the advising community on a regular basis? I get an email with a market update, and it's again, that's nice, but number one, I get it from everybody, and number two, if I want a market update, I know where to find it.
Yeah.
So it once again speaks to, when you approach the industry and you approach your ideal client, how do they want to be communicated with? And how do you, and this may be, and just my opinion, but this may be seminal to how to really engage with someone, is how do you help someone see an unrealized risk and then position yourself as the person that can help them solve it? I think that's the linchpin, right? How do you help someone see a risk that was unrealized and then position yourself as a solution provider? And to your point, if I see your risk and I may not be the step one to solving it, but I point you in a direction, man, oh man, you've totally differentiated. But the reason that scares the crap out of the industry is because I'm kind of taking a step aside and putting someone else in a first person position to solve a problem. So that scares advisors. But to your point, think about from a customer standpoint what that does. It's like, holy smokes, this guy's operating in my best interest, not his or her best interest. That's a game changer.
So, what you actually had, and I kind of wrote this down, and you just mentioned that. So really, advisors need to change the way they do business. They need to change the way they think about how to do business. They need to change how they're actually conducted, and they need to operate from a different place. You kind of mentioned that, the number one thing that advisors need to do is they need to figure out who they want to work with. So I call it, they've got to figure out their marketing game. And it's a bit of a play on the words. The G stands for what's their genius, and the A is for audience. Now those can be interchangeable. Doesn't mean you got to figure out your genius first and then your audience. It can work, both ways when you work with advisors trying to figure that. So you've got your genius, you have your audience, then the M stands for message. What is the message? What is the offer? Like, what is the thing that you can say that is actually going to engage somebody? How do you become relevant? And like you mentioned, message is all part of it. If you're sending somebody a newsletter that is not even one that you've created, that you bought from somebody else, from a marketing company, that probably your clients are getting that from 5 other advisors, how are you differentiate yourself? Are you actually connecting? Are you being relevant with them? And that's really the key in this day and age, is are you actually relevant to your audience? And a lot of advisors, the messaging that they're putting out there, not only does it look like everybody else's, but it's not even relevant to that audience, because most advisors don't even know who their audience is. And then the E in the game stands for engine. Where do you actually go? Where do you find these individuals on an ongoing basis so that you can go and start to build that relationship with them and nurture that relationship? Right. And that kind of speaks what you were just mentioning.
Right. So again, if there's takeaways from this initial conversation, it's, are you specialized? Yeah. Do you know what your ideal client looks like? And then potentially, do you know how to help them? Do you know how to be, like you said, the diagnostician? Do you know how to be the doctor who says, I can't help you, but I can refer you to a brain surgeon? Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
And then come back to me once you get your brain fixed, and we can talk about the rest of the stuff that's wrong with you.
Yeah, because the reality is if you got no brain fixed, there's no point of worrying about other challenges that you might have, because no brain,
I can't
you're
help
not alive.
Your bum leg if your brain doesn't work.
Exactly. So, from that perspective, and again, I enjoyed this, and we're definitely going to do more of these calls. And again, as we're starting this, but, really when it comes down to, and I think, in summary, and what I got from what you've mentioned, I mean, advisors, the industry has changed and it's changing, and not only the industry, but the whole environment is changing. And I think advisors really have to start looking at how they're conducting business in a different way. And there are solutions. Again, we don't have enough time on call today to go a little bit deeper into some of those, solutions. But really, I think from the perspective of, what my mission is, and what I understand that your mission, Jerry, is to really help advisors to start looking at business differently, start to recognize that the things they're doing, not that there is necessarily something wrong with them, they have to stop doing them, but maybe they need to adjust how they're doing it. Like you mentioned, if they're sending out messages, they've got to ask themselves the question, hey, if you're just sending emails, that's basically asking, hey, where can we go and have a meeting? And you're sending a newsletter that pretty well looks like everybody else's, you need to ask yourself, are there other assets that I can go and send to people where I'm actually not just giving them information for the sake of information, but educating them? And I think this is where, we'll talk about a little bit more closer, maybe on another call that we're going to do, of, the reality is that most of your clients, if you're an advisor, don't understand what their problems or pains or challenges they have. And you need to get in front of them, and you need to expose to them saying, hey, what are some of the challenges? What are the mistakes? What are the business killers, for an example, that, can completely kill your business? Like if you don't understand, right?
Good question.
Some of the questions that you need to ask. And again, we'll go into this a little bit more detail on another call, but this is what you need to first figure out, have a system. First of all, if I can summarize this, what we talked about, identify who your client is. And if you want to work with business owners, right? A lot of the things are already there that we can help you with, what I'm doing and what Jerry already has to start, what are the questions you need to start asking these business owners, right? So that you can actually get into the conversation and actually help them.
Yeah. Or how can you facilitate letting the business owner self-realize what their issues are, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, you know, people, right? When you facilitate the light going on for someone, that's a whole different ballgame.
You just open up a whole nother conversation, which you definitely don't have time for today. But what I want to mention that from the perspective of, if you're in front of a business owner and you're there and you tell them what their problem is, you need to realize that it's your problem. It's not their problem. Right. If you're in front of a business owner and you get them to realize what their problem is, they'll love you forever, because they get the breakthrough. They get that light bulb that you just mentioned, Jerry, going off in their head, going like, oh, wow, I didn't even thought about it that way. And I think this is what I'm hoping that's happening on this call as we're doing this with advisors, helping to understand that maybe there are some things that you're not doing, but that's what you need to focus on when you're in front of that client. You need to have them recognize that they're the ones that have a problem. It is their problem, and you are simply the solution that can help them resolve that problem. And this is where you as an advisor need to become that, you know what, help me with the word, the diagnostician.
Yes, the diagnostician.
Diagnostician, to diagnose what the challenge is. And this can be brought up by having that different conversation with them and asking them the question, from the perspective of, and I know as an advisor, I've done this when I was in front of a business owner. We'd have a meeting with the people at their company, and I would say, hey, Jim, we're going to have a conversation right now that definitely is going to happen one day. You're dead. You're not around. We just had your funeral. We came back from the funeral. We're having a conversation with your staff. And I'm going to ask them a question. You can't speak because you're dead. And I turned, I would have turned to the, other people at the organization, asked them, so what do we do now? And there's always quiet that gets broken by Jim that start telling them what they need to do.
Right. It's like, dude, you can't talk. You're dead.
You're dead. Right.
Yeah.
Like, shut up.
And an old buddy of ours, he used to make that the business owner sit in the corner of the room.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
Right. So you can't even sit at the table. You have to take your chair over there. And of course, the business owner would yell from the corner when the questions were asked. It's like, dude, you can't talk. You're dead.
Yeah. Power. And again, this is what we're talking about. And again, as we summarize and finish this call today, this is what I want. And, advisors to recognize that, hey, you know what? You need to start looking at business different. I know that most advisors that I speak to on a daily basis, they're passionate about what they're doing. The challenge is that they were never taught how to market themselves, how to position themselves. And they're struggling as far as how to do it. And again, I know with the things that we're doing at Reset Global and that you, Jerry, at Selling Technologies are doing, we have the tools. Let's get into a conversation. Get in contact with us. Let's get connected and, just have a conversation. From that perspective, is there anything else, Jerry, that you want to add as far as what we had? And we're definitely going to have another conversation. I've already got notes here for about 3 or 4 different things that we can expand on this conversation from today.
Yeah. No, I think we got to put stuff out in bite-sized pieces, if you will. And probably today is, because like you said, we could throw out something and then talk for another 20 minutes. So I think today's focus should be maintained, which is you got to figure out what your specialization is, the clients that you want to work with, and then where they are. And then finally, how do you help them self-realize where they may have some risk issues that are, number one, unrealized, and number two, are big enough that they should be solved for now.
Yeah, definitely.
There you go. That's a giant challenge right there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Jerry, you know what? I want to thank you for today. Thank you for sharing your ideas and everything. And yeah, we're definitely going to plan on doing more of these and more on a consistent basis. And again, you know what? Hopefully that advisors have found this helpful. If you have, shared with other advisors. Like I said, we're going to be sharing a lot more going forward from here.
Sounds good, man.
All right.
Have a good one.
Yeah.